Frankly, I'm embarrassed by what I see by the latest State of the Global Workplace data from Gallup. I'm going to go over what I think are the most important highlights in just a moment, but I want to say I'm so frustrated that it's the same information literally year over year, and we don't seem to be doing anything differently. So get ready for a rant, because I'm about to go off on what I see and why I think it's there. And then at the end, we'll talk about what I think can be done and how to change some of those trends. Let's start with a little bit about the report itself. Gallup is an internationally recognized company that does surveys on a variety of topics, and they do one every year on the workplace. They talk to people who work literally around the globe and ask them questions about what are you thinking, what bothers you, how are you engaged, etc. They explore things like what causes stress, what level of engagement you have with the workplace, if you're engaged at all. They separate between managers and non-managers. There's a whole variety of factors that they explore. This last report just came out a little bit ago, and I'm shocked. I literally am dumbfounded. Right off the bat, you start looking at the number of employees who are disengaged or actively disengaged. Now think about that for a minute. You've got people who are willing to say, yeah, I show up at work, but I'm not really into it. And then you have the people who are like, I show up to work and I don't do anything. But let me go through just a couple of the numbers. In North America, the number of employees who are disengaged / actively disengaged is 67%. That's 2/3 of every employee in North America aren't really connected to their jobs. They're there, but they're not getting anything out of it. And more importantly, they're not giving anything to it. When you go to Europe, that number surges to 88%. That's crazy. 88% of people, almost 9 out of 10 in Europe, are showing up at a job and not bought in on the work they're doing. What's also important is what's going on within the minds of these people. When you start comparing people who are happy to do their job and everyone else, the numbers are shocking again. The percentage of people who are stressed at work who like their job is 34%, 1 out of 3. But when you start factoring in the people who are actively disengaged, that number goes to 54%. Over half. The same is true for people who are worried. The percentage of people who are at work and like their job, 30% are worried. The people who are actively disengaged, again, over half, 52%. Stress and worry are rampant in our workplaces, whether you like the job or not. And if you think about how that erodes decision-making, there's no wonder at all in my mind why we're seeing so many companies struggle to deliver results. But let's dig a little bit deeper. When you look at people who are engaged, you see massive improvements in operational performance, sales, customer loyalty, engagement, and the biggest one, 23% more profitability. If you're a business leader, you should be freaking out that your employees aren't engaged. And oh, by the way, the managers are experiencing more stress and more worry and more negative experience in general than all of the non-managers. In fact, not only are they more likely to be stressed, angry, sad, and lonely than non-managers, over half of them, 56%, are looking to leave their organizations. Over half of all managers want to leave and go somewhere else. That's downright tragic. And to be fair, I know exactly how those managers feel. When you're put under a pressure to deliver against a global strategy that just doesn't make sense, it's ridiculous to keep asking people to do more with less. But that's what we do. Leaders, we've got to change the narrative. We have got to make this a completely different world if we want to keep our businesses in place. Otherwise, trust me, the entire system is going to collapse and break under the weight of this strain. And here's the most important point I want to make in this video. The level of poor engagement is not the actual problem to solve. As a matter of fact, it's just the indicator of a much deeper problem. If you think you can fix engagement and then fix everything else, you're playing the wrong game. That game cannot be won. Engagement cannot be addressed without addressing two much more important gaps: the lack of clarity and the lack of empowerment. Engagement is this idea that people buy in to the bigger picture, that they recognize what is good for the company is also good for them. They have to see both of those things happening at the same time for them to be fully engaged. And the only way they're going to fully commit to what the company is saying is important is when the company has already provided the clarity that is needed and empowered people to achieve it. So let's start there. Too many companies set expectations and don't empower people to meet them. You and I have both probably experienced that multiple times. But you would be shocked at how many people don't even make their expectations clear. I constantly talk with leaders who aren't even clear themselves and they're senior executives about what the top 3 priorities of the company are. Tell me what priority 1 is, followed by priority 2, followed by priority 3. Doesn't exist. Instead, what I hear are their cross-functional conflicts and turf battles, and then waste just oozing out all over the place, causing a mess for anybody trying to do great work. And the result? Demotivation. People are demotivated by how hard it is to do the jobs they're paid to do. And that demotivation has evolved into a global trend of disengagement. People are showing up to work only to not do it. So leaders, as I've said before, and I will continue to say, the 3 things you need to do first is provide clarity through the scope of the strategy. Are we here to disrupt or not? Is disruption a good thing or a bad thing? Get that figured out, because you will create massive amounts of conflict within your own teams if one group thinks they're there to create disruption and the other group thinks they're there to fight it every step of the way. You cannot execute a strategy without that alignment around scope. Number 2, leaders, make sure prioritization is locked down. What is priority 1? What is priority 2? What is priority 3? Everything else is secondary or tertiary. What matters most should be at the front of the line and guiding every decision that every person makes. There should be zero, and I mean zero, confusion over what the priorities are in the organization. And that prioritization should then turn into goal and role alignment. Are the goals aligned with those priorities? Yes or no? Are the goals clear? Yes or no? Because if you provide that clarity around what success looks like, then you can start working on the role alignment to achieve those outcomes. Get your scope right, get your prioritization right, and get your goal and role alignment right. Then go after empowerment immediately. Make sure everybody has what they need to achieve success, and let them understand if they don't get what they're asking for, it's because it wasn't part of priority 1, 2, or 3. It's very rare that people will fight you when you bring them in to the information flow. What they want is to understand how and why decisions were made. And if something's going to happen later, great. If it can't happen now, treat me like an adult. Let me know. That is how you start to get the credibility you need for engagement. So here's the big question. What do you think? Join the conversation, chime in, let me know, and let's spark a revolution. Let's change the way we lead so that we can truly enjoy the work we're doing. Holo moa, onward and upward.